A UN squad entered the Congo jungle to keep peace. Days later, their camp was empty, gear untouched, no tracks, no blood. What happened to them? It started with a routine mission. The helicopter's rotors thumped a steady rhythm over the Ituri forest, a sprawling green sea that swallowed the horizon. Captain Mark Duval stared out the open door, his jaw tight beneath a week's worth of stubble. At 36, he carried the weight of too many missions in his gray eyes. Rwanda still lingered there, a ghost he couldn't outrun. His fingers gripped the edge of his seat, knuckles white against the olive drab of his UN fatigues. The Second Congo War had dragged on for years, and this deployment, monitoring a shaky ceasefire in a remote corner of the Congo, felt like another roll of the dice. 5 minutes out, the pilot shouted over the comms. Mark nodded, turning to his squad crammed into the chopper's belly. Gear check. We're not here for a picnic. Sergeant Léon Bisset smirked, leaning back with his rifle propped between his knees. Late 20s, broad-shouldered and cocky, he had the kind of grin that said he'd seen worse and laughed at it. His dark hair was cropped short, sweat already beading on his brow. What's the matter, Captain? Scared of a little jungle rot? He patted his chest rig, packed with extra magazines. I've tracked rebels through worse than this. We'll be fine. Keep that mouth in check, Bisset, Mark said, voice low but sharp. This isn't Kinshasa. No bars, no backup. Léon snorted, unfazed, and glanced at the others. Corporal Adrien Roux sat across from him, his medic's pack strapped tight across his chest. At 23, he was the youngest in years, but not in spirit. His brown eyes flicked over the squad with a quiet intensity, cataloging them like patience. He adjusted his helmet, brushing a hand through short, dark hair, damp with sweat, and gave Léon a sidelong look. Maybe save the bravado for when we're not dangling 100 feet up. Charming as ever, Roux, Léon shot back, but there was no venom in it. Beside him, Private Julien Moreau fidgeted with his rifle sling, his 19-year-old hands trembling just enough to notice. Skinny and pale, with a mop of brown hair under his helmet, he looked like he'd stumbled out of basic training into a war zone. How long are we staying out here? He asked, voice cracking slightly. Long enough to do the job, Mark said, not looking at him. Eyes sharp, Moreau. You're not in Paris anymore. Private Thierry Ndongo, seated nearest the door, stayed silent. Mid-20s, wiry, with skin the color of burnt coffee, he was the squad's bridge to the locals. Born in the Congo, raised in France, fluent in Lingala and Swahili. His dark eyes scanned the jungle below, unreadable. His fingers rested on the rosary tucked into his vest, a habit he never explained. The chopper dipped, banking toward a clearing near an abandoned village. Mud huts sagged under vines, roofs caved in by neglect or shelling. The landing skids hit the ground with a jolt, and Mark was out first, boots sinking into the damp earth. Form up, perimeter check. The squad spilled out, weapons up, moving with the crisp efficiency of training. The air was thick, humid and heavy, like breathing soup. But it wasn't the heat that prickled Mark's neck. It was the silence. No birds chirped, no insects buzzed, just the rustle of leaves and the faint drip of water somewhere deep in the green. Quiet, isn't it? Thierry murmured, peering into the trees. His accent carried a faint lilt, a remnant of his childhood. Too quiet, Adrien said, slinging his medic bag over his shoulder with a practiced motion. He stepped toward the village, scanning the huts with narrowed eyes. Where'd everyone go? Rebels, probably, Léon said, kicking a rusted machete half buried in the dirt. Or they got smart and ran. Mark ignored the chatter, signaling them toward a rise overlooking the clearing. They set up camp there, tents pitched, a small fire crackling by dusk. Julien fumbled with his stakes, earning a sharp "move it, rookie" from Léon. Thierry knelt by the fire, muttering something in Lingala as he arranged the wood, a prayer maybe, or a curse. Night fell fast, the jungle swallowing the last light. Mark stood watch, his silhouette rigid against the glow of the flames. The others settled in, rations opened, voices low. Then Thierry froze, head cocked. "You hear that?" "Hear what?" Julien asked, eyes wide. "A whisper," Thierry said, frowning, "like someone calling my name." Mark turned, listening. The wind sighed through the canopy, a low moan that could have been anything. "Jungle plays tricks," he said finally. "Get some rest. We move at dawn." But as he settled into his tent, the silence pressed harder, and Thierry's words gnawed at him. A whisper. Out here, that could mean nothing. Or everything. Dawn broke gray and sluggish, mist curling through the trees like smoke. Mark roused the squad with a curt, "Up and out," his breath visible in the damp air. They ate quickly, hardtack and instant coffee, gearing up for a patrol to scout the ceasefire line 5 clicks north. The jungle loomed around them, a wall of green so dense it seemed to breathe. Léon took point, his rifle slung low, moving with the easy stride of a man who'd hunted men before. "Tracks here!" he called, crouching near a muddy trail. His finger traced the ground, prints human-sized but wrong. Too long, toes splayed unnaturally, edged with shallow gouges like claws. What the hell walks like this? "Animal, maybe," Adrian said, peering over his shoulder. His voice was steady, but his hand rested on his sidearm, fingers twitching slightly. "No animal I know," Léon replied, standing. "Not unless it's got thumbs." Julien edged closer, his rifle shaking slightly. "I saw something last night, by the trees, tall, moving fast." Mark's eyes narrowed. "You saw it? Or you think you did?" I don't know," Julien stammered, flushing. "It was dark." "Shadows and nerves," Mark said, but he glanced at the trees anyway. "Keep moving." The patrol stretched on, the squad threading through vines and roots, sweat soaking their fatigues. Thierry lagged behind, eyes darting to the canopy. "This place feels wrong," he said quietly to Adrian, "like it's watching." "You're from here," Adrian replied, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "What's it remind you of?" "Stories," Thierry said, hesitating. "Things that mimic, that take." Adrian frowned but didn't press, his brown eyes narrowing as he scanned ahead. Ahead, Léon cursed as his boots sank into a puddle, muttering about jungle rot and rebel traps. Mark kept them on course, his map creased and damp in his hands. By noon, they looped back toward camp, the unease simmering beneath their banter. Night fell again, heavier this time. The fire spat embers into the dark as the squad sat watch in pairs. Julien and Thierry took first shift, the rookie's jittery energy clashing with Thierry's calm. Mark lay in his tent, half awake, when Julien's voice cut through the stillness. "Did you hear that?" Mark sat up, grabbing his rifle. Outside, Julien stood by the fire, pointing into the trees. Thierry was already up, head tilted, listening. "Hear what?" Mark asked, stepping out. It sounded like me," Julien said, voice trembling. "Like my laugh, but off." Léon emerged from his tent, yawning. "You're cracking, kid. Jungle's got you spooked." "No, I heard it," Julien insisted. "Out there." Mark raised a hand for silence. The jungle held its breath. No wind, no rustle. Then it came, a low, stuttering chuckle, faint but unmistakable. It echoed Julien's nervous laugh from the chopper, warped and stretched, drifting from the dark. "What the f?" Leon muttered, unslinging his rifle. Thierry's face went taut, his rosary clutched tight. "That's not human," he whispered. "It's an animal," Mark said, though his grip tightened on his weapon. "Echoes play tricks out here." But the laugh came again, closer now, skittering through the trees like it was circling them. Adrian stepped out, his medic's calm fraying at the edges. "That's no animal," he said, voice low. "Animals don't mimic." "Rebels, then," Leon offered, scanning the shadows. "Trying to mess with us." "With Julian's laugh?" Adrian shot back, his brown eyes sharp. "They'd have to know him." The sound stopped as abruptly as it started, leaving the squad staring into the black. Mark ordered extra watches, him and Leon next, then Adrien and Thierry. No one slept easy. Julien huddled by the fire, muttering to himself, while Thierry's eyes never left the trees. In the dark, Mark replayed the sound in his head. Not rebels, not animals. Something else. Rwanda had taught him to trust his gut, and his gut was screaming now. Whatever was out there, it wasn't just watching, it was learning. The fire had dwindled to embers by the time Julien and Thierry took their watch, the second night clamping down like a lid on the jungle. Mark had ordered staggered shifts after the laughter. 2 awake, 3 asleep, rifles close. The air hung thick, a stew of humidity and rot, the kind that clung to skin and gear alike. Julien paced near the tents, his boots scuffing the dirt, his breath quick and shallow. At 19, he was all nerves and edges, his helmet slightly askew over his sweaty brow. "Stop moving so much," Thierry said, his voice low but firm. He sat cross-legged by the fire, rifle across his lap, the rosary dangling from his fingers. His dark eyes flicked to the trees, catching glints of moonlight. "You're making noise." Julien froze mid-step, clutching his weapon tighter. "Sorry, it's just... last night. That laugh. You heard it too." Thierry nodded, his jaw tight. "I heard it. Doesn't mean I know what it was." "You're from here," Julien pressed, stepping closer. "You said something about stories. What kind?" Thierry hesitated, thumbing the rosary beads. "Old ones. Things that walk like men but aren't. They mimic voices, take shapes. My grandmother called them moto wankisi, spirit thieves. Said they don't kill for food, just take." Julien's face paled. "You think that's out there?" "I think we're not alone," Thierry said, standing. He scanned the perimeter, the silence pressing in. No crickets, no frogs. Just the faint creak of branches overhead. "Stay close, eyes open." Inside his tent, Mark stirred, half dreaming of Rwanda. Gunfire, screams, a child's hand slipping from his grip. The memory jolted him awake, sweat soaking his undershirt. He checked his watch. 200 hours. Julien and Thierry's shift. He lay still, listening. Too quiet. Then it came. A scream, sharp and warped, like Julien's voice stretched over broken glass. "Help! Captain, help me!" Mark bolted upright, grabbing his rifle. Leon and Adrien were already moving, spilling out of their tents, weapons raised. The fire cast long shadows as they converged on the watchpost. Empty. Julien's rifle leaned against a log, barreled down, stock polished by nervous hands. Thierry's gear sat beside it, vest, mags, rosary coiled neatly on top. No blood, no footprints, no sign of a fight. "What the hell?" Leon muttered, circling the spot. His bravado faltered, his broad frame tense as he swept his rifle across the trees. "They were right here," Adrien said, his voice steady but thin. He knelt by Julien's rifle, fingers hovering over it like it might bite, his brown eyes narrowing. "No one's that quiet, not with gear like this." Mark's stomach twisted, Rwanda flashing again. Bodies gone, radios silent. "Spread out. Search the perimeter. They didn't just walk off." Leon nodded, taking the north edge while Adrian moved south, his flashlight cutting through the mist with a steady hand. Mark stayed central, eyes locked on the jungle. The scream came again, fainter now. Julian's plea warped into a gurgling wail that died mid-note. It echoed from the west, then the east, bouncing like a ricochet. "Captain!" Adrian called, his beam landing on something in the thorns, a scrap of Julian's uniform, snagged and swaying. No tears, no blood, just a clean strip of fabric dangling in the stillness. Leon jogged back, his face hard. Nothing north. No tracks, no nothing. That scream, it's not them. Can't be. "It was Julian," Adrian said, standing, his calm cracking as he adjusted his helmet. "You heard it." "I heard something," Leon snapped. "Doesn't mean it's him. Rebels could have, with no shots, no struggle." Mark cut in, his voice like steel. "Gear's here. They didn't run. They didn't fight." Thierry's voice broke the argument, faint and pleading from the dark. "Mark, help." It drifted from the trees, a perfect mimicry of his soft accent, then snapped off into silence. "That's not him," Adrienne whispered, stepping back, his flashlight trembling slightly in his grip. "It can't be." Mark's grip tightened on his rifle, his mind racing. Military logic said ambush, silent takedown, dragged off. But the gear, the voices, it didn't add up. "Regroup," he ordered. "Back to the fire. We hold until dawn." They obeyed, clustering around the embers, eyes outward. The jungle stared back, black and alive, its silence a weight that crushed their words. Julien and Thierry were gone, and whatever took them wasn't done. Dawn didn't break so much as seep in, a gray haze that barely pierced the canopy. The three survivors sat in a tight triangle, backs to the fire pit, rifles ready. Mark's face was a mask, but his hands betrayed him, fingers tapping the stock of his weapon, a tick from years of stress. Leon crouched low, his cynicism curdling into anger, while Adrian clutched his medic kit, his breath shallow, brown eyes darting beneath his helmet. "We need a plan," Mark said, voice hoarse. "We can't stay here." "Plan?" Leon spat, glaring at him. "Two men vanish and you want a plan? We should have moved at first light yesterday. Now we're down to 3. "Stow it, Bisset," Mark shot back. "Panic gets us nowhere." "Panic?" Leon stood, towering over him. "You're the one who lost them, Captain. You put the kid and Thierry out there, and now they're gone." Adrian's head snapped up. "Enough, Leon. Blaming him doesn't bring them back." "Doesn't it?" Leon turned on him. "He's supposed to lead us, not feed us to whatever's out there." Mark rose, stepping into Leon's space, their faces inches apart. "You want command? Take it. Otherwise, shut up and soldier." The standoff held, taut as a wire, until Leon backed off, muttering curses. Adrian exhaled, rubbing his temples with gloved fingers. "We need to search again. Daylight might show something." Mark nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. "Perimeter first, then we push west, where the scream came from." They moved out, the jungle closing in tighter, vines snagging their boots, leaves brushing their shoulders like fingers. The air buzzed with a faint hum, not insects, but something deeper, vibrating in their bones. Thierry's voice broke the stillness, soft and desperate. "Adrien, help me." He froze, flashlight trembling in his hand. "That's him. That's Thierry." "No, it's not," Mark said, grabbing his arm. "Keep moving." The voice came again, louder from the right. "Mark, please." Then from the left, overlapping, a chorus of Thierry's pleas swirling around them. Leon swung his rifle, firing a burst into the trees. The shots cracked and faded, swallowed by the green, hitting nothing. "Stop!" Mark barked. "You're wasting ammo." "It's everywhere," Leon said, chest heaving. "You hear that? It's playing with us." Adrian stumbled back, his calm unraveling. "What is it? Rebels don't do this. Animals don't—" His words cut off as Mark raised a hand, pointing. Ahead, through a gap in the foliage, it stood, a silhouette against the mist. Tall, too tall, its limbs stretched and thin, skin rippling like oil on water. Eyes glowed briefly, yellow and unblinking, before it jerked sideways and vanished. "Jesus," Leon whispered, aiming where it had been. "What was that?" Mark's heart slammed against his ribs, Rwanda's ghosts replaced by this new terror. "Fall back," he said, voice steady despite the shake in his hands. "To the camp." They retreated, the jungle pressing closer, branches snapping behind them like footsteps. Thierry's voice followed, now a taunt. "Mark, you can't run." It shifted to Julian's nervous laugh, then back, a cacophony of the lost. At the camp, they checked the radio, static laced with whispers that weren't theirs. "Base isn't hearing us," Adrian said, his fingers fumbling with the dials as he adjusted his helmet. "It's jammed." "Or something's jamming it," Leon added, his defiance gone, replaced by a hunted look. Mark stared at the trees. The creature's image burned into his mind. Not human, not animal, intelligent, malevolent, picking them apart. "We hold here," he said finally. "Fortify, wait for daylight to move." "Hold?" Leon laughed, bitter. "It took two without a sound. What's stopping it now?" "My orders," Mark snapped. "We stay together. That's our chance." Adrian nodded, though fear gleamed in his brown eyes. "I'll set up a tripwire, something to warn us." He worked fast, stringing wire from his kit with steady hands despite the tremor, while Leon reloaded, his jaw clenched tight. Mark stood watch, the jungle a living wall, its silence mocking them. Whatever it was, it knew them now, their voices, their fears, and it wasn't done. The camp festered under a midday sun that barely pierced the canopy, a faint glow swallowed by the jungle's green maw. Mark, Leon, and Adrian sat in a brittle silence, the ghosts of Julien and Thierry etched in the gear still stacked by the fire, rifles upright, vests folded, a rosary glinting like an unanswered prayer. Sleep had abandoned them, eyes hollowed by fear and fatigue. The tripwire Adrian had strung the night before sagged in the undergrowth, undisturbed, mocking their fragile defenses. The jungle pulsed, leaves shivered without wind, roots twisted like tendons beneath the mud. Mark's gray eyes darted to every shadow, his rifle a lifeline gripped too tight. Rwanda clawed at him, another squad slipping through his fingers, another failure he couldn't outrun. "We're dead if we stay," Leon said, his voice a low growl. He paced, broad shoulders hunched, sweat carving tracks down his dirt-streaked face. The cockiness had curdled into a raw, restless edge. "It's picking us off like flies. We hit the jeep, radio base. Get the hell out." "It's 5 clicks through that," Adrian said, nodding toward the trees with a tense jerk of his chin. His hands trembled as he repacked his medic kit, though his voice held steady, duty stitching him together through sheer will. "No cover, no line of sight. We'd be wide open." "Open here too," Leon shot back, kicking a log with a heavy boot. Embers sparked, dying fast in the humid air. "What's your plan, Rue? Sit and pray? I'm not waiting for it to snatch me next." Mark wiped his brow, the heat a vice around his chest, fear a second heartbeat thudding beneath his ribs. "Bissade's right. Jeeps are shot. We move fast. Tight. Leon on point, Adrian center. I'll cover rear. No stops. They broke camp in a flurry, abandoning tents, grabbing only what mattered: rifles, ammo, the radio. The jungle resisted, vines snagging their boots, branches clawing at their arms like greedy hands eager to hold them back. Leon led, machete flashing, each swing a curse against the green. "Place is alive," he muttered, hacking a root that bled dark sap, thick and sluggish. It pooled, glistening unnaturally, and didn't soak into the earth. "Eyes up!" Mark called, scanning behind with a tight grip on his weapon. The air thickened, a sour rot seeping in, coating his throat like a film. His gut screamed ambush, rebels, mines, but no human enemy moved this quiet, this clean. Adrian stayed close, flashlight clipped to his vest, its beam jittering across the undergrowth as he adjusted his helmet with a quick, practiced motion. "It's watching," he said, barely audible, his brown eyes flicking to the shadows. "It knows we're running." His fingers brushed his sidearm, a reflex against the unknown tightening his grip. "Then let it try me," Leon snarled, defiance flaring as he squared his shoulders. He slashed another vine, sap spattering his arm in dark streaks. "I'll carve its damn head off." The ravine loomed ahead, a narrow gash in the jungle, walls of earth and root choking the path. The jeep's rusted frame glinted half a click beyond, a beacon in the haze. Mark's breath quickened, hope, fragile and sharp, cutting through the dread. Then the ground shifted, a faint tremor, not footsteps, but something deeper, rippling underfoot like a pulse. He froze, rifle up. "You feel that?" Leon paused, machete mid-swing, his brow furrowing. "Yeah, what the hell?" A wet snap echoed from the left, like bone breaking under flesh. No voice, no mimicry, just a sound, raw and close, slicing through the silence. Adrian's flashlight swung, catching a gleam, something slick and dark, oozing from a cracked branch, dripping to the mud. It wasn't sap. It shimmered, iridescent, and stank of decay, a stench that made his nose wrinkle. "Move!" Mark barked, shoving them forward with a hard push. The ravine swallowed them, walls pressing in, roots curling overhead like a cage closing tight. The air grew colder, unnaturally so, breath fogging despite the heat as they advanced. Leon hacked faster, grunting with each blow, while Adrian's steps faltered, his duty warring with the dread creeping up his spine. Julian's voice slithered through, soft and warped. "Leon, don't leave me." It curled from the right, a wet gurgle trailing the words like a drowning gasp. Leon spun, rifle snapping up, his jaw clenched tight. "That's not him. It's playing its game." "Keep moving," Mark ordered, voice tight as steel. Shadows stretched, bending wrong against the light, unnatural angles twisting in the mist. Thierry's whisper joined Adrien. "Help." Soft, pleading, drifting from above like a lure. Adrien stumbled, his flashlight clattering to the ground, beam spinning wild across the ravine walls. "We can't leave them," he said, reaching for it with a shaky hand, his calm shattering as his brown eyes widened. A shadow darted, low, fast, a blur of sinew and claws along the ravine's edge. No sound, just motion, gone before Mark could aim. Then Adrian screamed, his, mid-breath, cut off as if snipped by scissors. Mark whipped around, hard a hammer pounding his chest. Adrian's kit hit the mud, straps intact, flashlight rolling to a stop, beam flickering out into darkness. He was gone. "Adrian!" Leon roared, firing into the trees, bursts of 5.56 shredding leaves in a furious spray. "Show yourself, you Leon, stop!" Mark lunged, grabbing his arm with a desperate yank. "You're too late." The ground trembled again, a low growl vibrating through the roots, shaking the earth beneath them. Leon's defiance turned to a choked yell as something yanked him sideways. Not up, not back, but into the ravine wall. His boots gouged furrows in the mud, machete spinning free with a dull clatter. Then silence, swallowed by earth and shadow, his rifle dropping beside Adrian's kit. Mark staggered back, alone now, breath a ragged sob tearing from his throat. The jeep loomed ahead, impossibly far through the haze. He ran, boots slipping, jungle blurring. Vines lashed his face, thorns tore his sleeves, drawing thin lines of blood. Voices swelled, Julian's laugh, Thierry's pleas, Adrian's scream, Leon's curse, a chorus of the lost, circling tighter, louder. A new sound joined, a scrape like claws on bone, trailing him like a hunter's taunt. He skidded to the jeep, chest heaving, hands shaking as he checked it. Keys in, gear strapped, blood on his arm, but not enough to explain the loss. He climbed in, turned the ignition with a trembling twist. Nothing. Dead. The voices peaked. "Mark! Mark!" His squad taunting, accusing, their echoes clawing at his mind. He slammed the dashboard, Rwanda flooding back, a child's bloodied face staring blankly, his failure eternal. In the mist, it stood, a sinewy figure, too tall, limbs bent wrong, skin rippling like oil over bone. Yellow eyes locked on him, unblinking, piercing through the haze, then it jerked sideways, vanishing into the green. A faint smear glistened on the jeep's hood. Not blood, not sap, but something alive, pulsing faintly with a sickening rhythm. Mark's scream caught in his throat, the jungle swallowing it whole. Mark stumbled from the jeep, its dead engine a silent tombstone mocking his last hope. The ravine stretched before him, a jagged scar through the jungle, its walls of root and earth glistening with moisture that wasn't rain. His rifle hung heavy, slung across his chest, barrel warm from useless bursts. Blood seeped from the gash on his arm, a dull throb beneath the adrenaline, staining his fatigues in dark patches. 5 clicks from nowhere, the creature closing in. He was a dead man running, and he knew it. The jungle pressed down, vines coiling tighter, thorns snagging his boots, the air a shroud of rot and heat that choked his lungs. Discipline frayed, terror gnawing at the edges, guilt a knife twisting deeper with every step. "Keep it together," he rasped, voice cracking like dry earth under strain. Rwanda flooded back, gunfire barking, smoke stinging his eyes, a child's hand slipping from his, her scream swallowed by chaos. He'd failed then, and now his squad, Julian's wide eyes, Thierry's rosary, Adrian's steady hands, Leon's brash laugh, plucked away, one by one. Their voices lingered, a torment he couldn't silence. Julian's laugh skittered behind him, high and broken. "Captain, why'd you leave me?" But fainter now, less a taunt than a memory etched in pain. He shook his head, sweat stinging his eyes, and pushed into the ravine. The ground shuddered, a low tremor like in the jeep run, rippling through the mud with an unsettling pulse. Not footsteps, but something alive beneath, stirring the earth. He froze, rifle up, breath fogging in the sudden chill that gripped the air. The walls loomed closer, roots pulsing faintly, like veins under skin stretched taut. A scrape echoed ahead, claws on wood, deliberate, not mimicry. Mark's pulse hammered, Rwanda's ghosts fading under this new, primal dread surging through him. "Show yourself," he muttered, stepping forward, boots sinking into the mire with a wet squelch. The ravine narrowed, a tunnel of green and shadow, the air thick with a sour tang, not decay but something sharper, like burnt metal searing his nostrils. Thierry's voice drifted, soft and pleading. "Mark, help me." A lure tugging him deeper into the dark. He gritted his teeth, resisting, but his legs moved anyway, drawn by the echo of a man he'd lost. Around a bend the jungle opened. A fallen log, moss slick and cracked, jutted across the path. Claw marks raked its bark, deep and fresh, glinting with its same iridescent ooze from the ravine, catching the dim light. No blood, no flesh, just the mark of something wrong, unnatural. Then it was there, crouched atop the log, a silhouette of sinew and malice. Too tall, limbs bent at angles that defied bone, skin rippling like oil over water, pooling and stretching in the faint glow. Yellow eyes burned, unblinking, boring into him with cold intent. It tilted its head, a jerky twitch, and hissed. A sound like steam escaping a cracked pipe. No voice this time, just raw menace. Mark fired, full auto, rounds tearing into the log with splintering force. Wood shattered, sap sprayed in dark arcs, but the creature blurred left, a streak of shadow against the roots. He swung, finger locked on the trigger, but it darted again, right, then above, a predator's dance through the canopy, swift and relentless. "Come on!" he roared, voice raw, throat burning with the effort. "Face me, you bastard!" The hiss answered, sharper now, slicing through the hum that pulsed in his ears like a living thing. The ground tilted, not imagination, but real, mud sliding underfoot as roots writhed, coiling toward him with deliberate intent. He stumbled, back slamming a tree, bark gouging his spine through his fatigues. The jungle was alive, complicit. Branches creaked overhead, leaves brushed his face, cold and wet, like fingers testing his pulse with chilling precision. It was everywhere, around him, under him, inside his skull, a presence he couldn't shake. He pushed off, running blind, rifle swinging uselessly as panic took hold. The jeep was dead, but the clearing, maybe a signal, a last gasp at survival. His pack thudded, flare gun digging into his hip with every step. He tore it free, hands slick with sweat and blood, and fired skyward with a trembling pull. Red light arced, a fleeting wound in the canopy, flickering through mist before snuffing out into nothingness. No choppers, no rescue, just the echo of his own panting, ragged and alone, filling the silence. The creature loomed ahead, blocking the path, a tower of sinew and shadow, taller now, limbs unfolding like a spider's legs, claws glinting faintly in the haze. It didn't speak, didn't mimic, just stared, eyes glowing through the mist like twin suns. Then the voices came, not from its mouth but the jungle itself. Julian's whimper, "Please, Captain," blending with Thierry's Lingala chant, low and mournful, then Adrian's scream, sharp and cut mid-breath, and Leon's snarl, "You failed us." They wove together, a cacophony rising from the roots, the leaves, the air, surrounding him in a chorus of blame. Mark emptied his mag, rounds punching mist, splintering vines, hitting nothing but echoes that mocked his efforts. The rifle clicked dry, and he dropped it, drawing his pistol, 9 rounds, a dwindling lifeline in his shaking grip. "I tried!" he gasped, backing away, boots slipping in the shifting mud as he retreated. "I tried to save you!" Rwanda flashed, a child's face, blood pooling, his hands too slow, too weak. Here, too slow again. It advanced, jerky and relentless, claws scraping the log as it closed the distance. The ground buckled, a root bursting free, tripping him with a sudden jolt. He fell, pistol skittering across the mud, and scrambled for it. 6 rounds left, retrieved with a desperate lunge. Adrian's scream erupted from the trees, mid-note, then silence, sharp and final. It lunged, a blur of claws and eyes, and he fired, once, twice, 3 times, bullets vanishing into shadow, useless against the dark. A claw raked his leg, fire searing up his thigh, but he rolled, knife flashing from his boot, slashing air with a wild swing. The clearing broke through. He burst past vines, chest burning, and collapsed by the Jeep's rusted hulk, breath heaving in ragged gasps. Blood soaked his sleeve, his leg, pistol trembling in his hand. 3 shots left, a faint hope slipping away. The voices swelled, a choir of blame. Julien, Thierry, Adrien, Léon. Mark, 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 ringing from every direction, inescapable. It stepped from the trees, deliberate, savoring his end, skin rippling over bone, eyes unblinking, fixed on him with cold malice. He fired, each shot a defiance, each miss a surrender. 2, 1, 0. The pistol clicked empty, and he threw it, a useless clatter against the Jeep's frame. "Take me!" he screamed, staggering up, fists clenched, blood dripping to the mud in dark rivulets. "Take me, damn you!" Silence crashed in, heavy as the jungle's weight, suffocating in its stillness. The creature stopped, head cocked, eyes boring through him like twin suns blazing in the dawn. A claw mark gleamed on the Jeep's hood, fresh, oozing that iridescent filth that pulsed faintly. Then it melted back, shadows swallowing it whole, leaving only the hum, deep, alive, mocking his survival with its relentless drone. Julian's laugh echoed once, faint and final, then nothing. Mark sank to his knees, chest heaving, the gray dawn creeping cold over the blood and gear strewn around him. Minutes bled into hours, he couldn't tell, time blurring in the haze. The Jeep loomed, a monument to his failure, the jungle still and watching with an unblinking gaze. Alone, alive, but not spared. His squad was gone, their voices silenced, and whatever took them had left him, for now. The jungle exhaled a damp hush as the UN relief chopper thrummed low over the Ituri forest, its rotors slashing through a morning mist that clung like a shroud. March 6th, 2005, 24 hours since Captain Mark Duval's squad missed their check-in, a silence that gnawed at Lieutenant Paul Garnier's nerves. He leaned out the open door, wind tugging at his salt and pepper hair, his weathered face creased with a decade of peacekeeping scars. Congo's chaos, rebel ambushes, massacres, was old hat, but this stillness below, unbroken by gunfire or distress calls, felt wrong, like a held breath waiting to scream. "Landing zone ahead," the pilot crackled over the comms, voice tinny against the rotor wash. "No smoke, no signals." Garnier grunted, adjusting his headset with a flick of his wrist, and signaled his team. 6 soldiers crammed in the chopper's belly, rifles slung, gear clanking as they braced. "Look sharp," he said, his baritone cutting through the noise with authority. "Duval's not the type to ghost us. They're either gone or holed up." Private Diego Lopez, lanky and twitchy, fidgeted with his vest, muttering in Spanish under his breath. "Maldita selva," his olive skin slick with sweat already. "Maybe they ran," he said louder, grasping for logic in his uneven tone. "Rebels hit hard out here." Garnier shot him a look, steady but edged with impatience. "Duval doesn't run. Perimeter check on touchdown. Move." The chopper dipped, skids kissing mud in the clearing with a jolt, and the team spilled out, fanning into a defensive arc with practiced snap. The air hit like a fist, thick, sour with rot, heavy as wet wool against their skin. No birds chirped, no insects droned. Just the drip of water from unseen leaves and the creak of branches, a slow heartbeat under the green. Garnier's boots sank, sucking at each step, and a chill prickled his neck, sharper than the oppressive heat. "Eyes up!" he barked, sweeping his rifle across the trees with a steady arc. The others moved, boots crunching over vines toward the rise where Duval's squad had camped. The sight loomed into view, and Garnier stopped, breath catching in his throat. Tents sagged, half collapsed, flaps fluttering in a breeze he couldn't feel, like ghosts tugging at the fabric with unseen hands. The fire pit smoldered, embers cold and gray, a faint wisp of smoke curling into nothing. In the center, the squad's gear stood like a still life, rifles propped against logs, barrels down, vests stacked with precision, ammo pouches sealed tight. A rosary, Thierry Ndongo's, Garnier recalled from the briefing, lay coiled atop a medic's kit, beads catching a glint of muted light, untouched by haste or blood. "What the hell is this?" Diego said, rifle dipping as he gaped, his voice trembling, bravado crumbling under the weight of the scene. "They just left it." Claire circled the jeep, parked at the clearing's edge, its rusted frame hunched like a wounded beast under the mist. Keys dangled in the ignition, fuel cans strapped to the back, canvas straps frayed but secure. Engines dead, but they were here, recently. Garnier stepped closer, boots silent on the damp earth, his shadow stretching long and thin across the mud. A pistol lay near the jeep, magazine empty, barrel crusted with mud, as if flung in a last gasp of defiance. Blood streaked the ground beside it, dark, fresh, a smear too small for death, too real for comfort. He crouched, fingers hovering over the stain, the copper tang faint but sharp in his nose. "No bodies," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "No drag marks, no shell casings." Diego edged back, flashlight jittering in his grip, casting wild beams. Rebels spooked them. Had to. They ran, dropped everything. "With no shots fired?" Claire snapped, pointing to the rifles with a sharp gesture. "5 weapons, full mags. Look at them. Stacked, not scattered. They didn't fight, didn't run." Garnier stood, scanning the jungle with a slow, deliberate sweep. The trees towered, trunks twisted like old bones, leaves drooping wet and heavy, glistening with something that wasn't dew, a slick, unnatural sheen. A branch snapped to his left, sharp, deliberate, not wind. He swung his rifle, heart kicking against his ribs, but saw only shadows, deep, shifting, pooling in corners where light should have pierced. "Form up," he said, quieter now, a thread of unease lacing his command. "Something's off." The team tightened, backs to the jeep, barrels outward in a tense circle. Diego's flashlight flickered, cutting through mist, catching glints of nothing but green. Then it came, a faint laugh, soft and stuttering, drifting from the trees. Julian's nervous chuckle, warped and distant, rising like a bubble through water, then popping into silence with an eerie fade. "You hear that?" Diego whispered, his grip whitening on his rifle, voice cracking slightly. "Tell me you heard that." "Wind," Garnier said, though his pulse said otherwise, thudding hard in his ears. "Jungle tricks." "Rebels, then," Diego pressed, voice rising, desperate for a box to put it in. "Mimicking them, messing with us." "With no tracks?" Garnier gestured to the mud, smooth, unbroken save their own prints, a blank slate defying logic. "No blood beyond this speck? No casings? No struggle?" He tapped the pistol with his boot, the clink loud against the hush, a stark punctuation. "They're gone, vanished." The jungle leaned in, vines curling over the tents like slow fingers claiming their prize, roots snaking toward the gear with deliberate intent. A low hum buzzed in their ears, not mechanical, but alive, thrumming through the earth, vibrating up their spines like a living pulse. Diego flinched, nearly tripping, his flashlight clattering to the mud with a dull thud. "We need to go," he said, snatching it up, beam shaking wildly. "Now!" "Photos first," Garnier ordered, pulling a camera from his pack, his hand steady despite the itch crawling under his skin. "Base wants proof. Document it. All of it." He snapped shots, the jeep, rifles, blood, rosary, each click a gunshot in the silence, sharp and final. The others stood watch, rifles twitching at every rustle, eyes darting. As they retreated to the chopper, the laugh came again, fainter, mocking, trailing them like a whisper on the wind, elusive and cold. Garnier glanced back, catching a flicker in the trees, a shadow, tall and thin, bending wrong against the mist, gone before he could blink, a ghost in the haze. The chopper lifted off, the camp shrinking below, swallowed by the green tide that claimed it. No one spoke, the hum fading as they climbed, but it lingered in their bones, a weight they couldn't shake. Garnier stared at the photos in his lap, the blood smear stark against the mud, the shadow nagging at him like an unanswered question. 5 soldiers, Duval's iron will, Bissey's bravado, Roux's calm, Moreau's nerves, Ndongo's quiet, gone without a trace. Whatever took them wasn't rebels, wasn't war. It was older, hungrier. And as the jungle receded, he knew it wasn't done. 3 weeks later, the UN headquarters in Kinshasa buzzed with a hum of bureaucracy. Radios crackling, papers shuffling, officers barking orders in clipped tones. The air was stale, tinged with coffee and sweat, a stark contrast to the jungle's rot. Mark Duval's photo stared up, gray eyes, tight jaw, a man who'd seen too much. Now a ghost, lost to the void. The page skimming Garnier's report with a practiced eye. 5 French peacekeepers, Duval, Bissey, Roux, Moreau, and Ndongo, vanished near the Ituri forest, March 5, 2005. Last contact, a garbled radio burst, static and whispers, unreadable even after enhancement. Relief team found their camp abandoned, gear intact, jeep dead, blood trace minimal. No bodies, no enemy presence. Desertion? Unlikely. Duval's record was spotless, his squad loyal to a fault. Ambush? No evidence? Rebels didn't vanish victims without a fight, and the weapons were untouched, pristine. Starvation, disease? Absurd, given the timeline and supplies stacked neatly at the site. Garnier stepped in, his uniform crisp but his face haggard, lines etched deeper by sleepless nights. "Major," he said, saluting with a stiff arm, "you wanted the photos." Each image stark and unsettling. The jeep, rifles, blood smear. The clearing's edge, mist curling, and a blur in the background. Tall, elongated, faintly humanoid, a shape that didn't belong. "What's this?" "Glitch," Garnier said too quickly, his voice tight. Camera shook. Jungle's full of shadows, plays tricks on the lens. "Your report mentions a laugh. Explain." He shifted, uneasy, his hands clasping briefly before settling. "Heard it twice. Sounded like one of theirs. Moreau, the kid. Could have been wind, echoes off the trees. Team was rattled, though." "Rattled! 5 soldiers vanish. Gear left like a damn exhibit, and you're rattled by wind?" Garnier's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching faintly. "I've seen ambushes, Major. This wasn't that. No tracks, no blood trail beyond a drop. They were just gone, like the jungle swallowed them whole." Squad 7. Alpha. Missing. Cause undetermined. Desertion improbable. Hostile action unsupported. Recommend site quarantine pending further investigation. Days later, the file reached New York, buried in a sea of war reports piling high. Analysts skimmed it, shrugged. Another Congo anomaly lost in the shuffle. The photo was flagged, enhanced, dismissed as artifacting, a trick of light and lens. Case sealed, forgotten, consigned to the archives.